It got to a point where all I had was walkways between 1,800 and 2,200 items for sale. I was ready to just burn it all to the ground effectively, and that is what's crazy.
Non-apologetic nonsense.
I got to live life like a hoarder for the past year in my own home, but yet I am not a hoarder. Right now outside is a 20-yard dumpster. If anyone doesn't know how big a 20-yard dumpster is, it's big. And I've spent the past week filling that thing up. I'm telling you, it is full to the brim. Let me explain how we got here. I started a eBay business. I started buying random items or small lots from auction groups, this or that, and all I had was my home to work out of. Now, bear in mind, my home is 4 bedrooms, right? 4 bed, 2 bath, big open kitchen and living room. It is not a small place at all. I thought, I can rock this out of my home for a long time. I have 2 spare bedrooms. We can do this. Over time, I started buying 2 pallets of stuff at a time, 3, 4 pallets. And once again, everything was working out outside of the house or inside of the house. However, what winded up slowly happening is both hallways, right, were lined with boxes. I have these boxes kind of like crates, but they are cardboard, but they lock together. So you can stack them, 8 high and be fine. It's like Legos. Slowly that took over the hallways. So my hallways for the past couple years have just been to the point where you got to walk completely sideways to get through them, okay? So I have a shipping room. The shipping room started to get full. Boxes starting at the back wall, working their way forward. Now, bear in mind, this isn't what they call a death pile, like unlisted stuff. This is all stuff that at this point wasn't paying my bills, but at the point that we got to where I'm filling up that first bedroom, it was starting to. It was paying me about 50% of what I got for working a full-time job. So after I filled up the first bedroom, the living room, first the kitchen and then the living room, several stacks of boxes. It got to a point where all I had was walkways, these makeshift hallways, right, with the boxes. You know what I mean? Where you had this sort of loop-de-loo around the house. And it's a weird thing since this was generating me income. And by the time it got to the point of hallways, it was generating more income than my full-time job was, right? But it is strange that stuff like that essentially became part of the house, right? It was no longer like I'm stepping over this or I'm going in between these things. This just became the layout of my home, which I had a grandmother who was a hoarder. And I imagine this is exactly how they live every single day. They just no longer see it. Now, the difference is all of my stuff was brand new in package items that I was actively selling, moving, rotating stock. But essentially, it took the whole house away. So I thought, we need a solution, right? I have a big piece of property out here. And so I bought a 40-foot high cube storage container, right? About a little while ago. So that's exactly what it sounds like. It's 40 foot long, and I believe the high cubes are 10 foot tall instead of 8, or maybe they're 8 foot tall and the rest are 6. They're 2 foot taller than a typical storage container. So a lot of the items went out there, right? It was all neat, organized, different categories, subcategories, but it wasn't big enough to take all the stuff out of the house because when I got the storage container, I started buying half semi-loads, right? So your semi-load, depending on where you're getting it from, is going to be between 20 and 24 pallet spaces. I was buying anywhere from like 6 to 8, sometimes 10 pallets at a time. Now I was selling stuff, I'm selling, 250 to 350 items a month, but I kept ordering and then none of the stuff got out of the house. I was able to mitigate it a little bit, right? First, I got my hallways back, but I still, up until this dumpster came, I completely lost the kitchen. My back studio, we have the video studio here, and then I have a basic recording studio, whether vocals or full band. And it had taken up about half of that room as well. So I had been waiting a long time for getting a dumpster. I had been looking more into getting an actual smaller dumpster that every week the trash company would dump. But out here, at least, I don't know how it is in an actual city, but out here on like Bexar County roads, you're having to enter into like 3-year, 5-year contracts. So eventually I just pulled the trigger. I said, screw it, 500 plus bucks, whatever. Drop that container off out here. And I have spent the last week reclaiming my entire house and really in the process, my property. So right now, for the first time since I started this business, which by the way, if we want to fast forward to right now, I'm no longer working my other job. This job overtook that. It overtook that in time and in the amount of income I was making. So I thought, hell, I don't have to work a real job anymore, right? I can make more income, work less time, and then just have the online sales site that we now have. It is an absolute beautiful thing. And being sort of forced into that and being able to come back, because it's weird. It got so bad that I couldn't properly clean the house. You know, like it wasn't filthy, but you couldn't do a real good job. You couldn't clean the corners where the walls and the carpet meets, things like that. And it just starts to make you feel bad about yourself, right? Like I would wake up in the morning, go around the mine of stuff in my bedroom, through the hallway sideways into the kitchen, knowing I have to step over this, go around this. And it just made me feel like shit, right? Like you wake up and you're like, fuck, this sucks. So I could only imagine how a person feels who, well, whether they argue this point or not, but they're keeping junk. They're keeping newspapers and little knickknacks from the dollar store, you know. I don't know. After living like that, I think anybody who lives like that every day should be
jailed for life.
You know, it is just so refreshing to have, like I say, it wasn't even a dirty house problem. It was a cluttered house. But it is so amazing to have that back. Now I got to do a heavy cleaning on everything. Shampoo the carpets, this, that, boom, boom. But yeah, it's starting to look like when I moved in here. Dumpsters out there, dumpsters full, dumpsters about to be picked up. But man, you just, at least for me, I took it for granted. I was like, all right, I'm going to have to sacrifice part of this house to build this business. But like most things, it took me about 2 years. You know, it took me a lot longer than I thought. I thought, well, 6 months, I'll get a container. But by the time I got the container, I'd already grew too much. So now everything's out in the container. I still do have my shipping room in the house because there's just no room for it out in my container. I have, I don't know, somewhere probably between 1,800 and 2,200 items for sale at any given time. I just got into paintings now too, buying a bunch of paintings and from a wholesaler, and that's a whole nother thing that that I'm trying to work on. So I think the next step is getting a second storage container, although right now would be a foolish time when there's not any boats in the ports, tariffs, everything. So if you see a shipping container, I guarantee they're about 3 times the price they should be right now. But a second 40-footer, and this will never happen again. I'd go as far as to say it'll never happen again anyways. I use this as a stepping stone to build the business, but man, by the end of that, I felt like I was being strangled by these items. I was ready to just burn it all to the ground effectively, you know? And that is what's crazy. Out there in the dumpster is probably $3,000-$4,000 at least of brand new items. It would be like where I'd take a gamble on an item and instead of testing the waters, I'd order like 50 of something or 100 of something. And lots of times that pays off and you're like, hell, this is a great idea. And you order again. But the only way to get to that point is to test some of these items. And some of them don't sell very well. So I did have to put in just thousands of dollars of, you know, stuff that I have 100 of that maybe sells 1 a month. So you keep 20, you throw away 80. But holy hell, was every bit of it worth it. I don't care if there's $10,000 worth of stuff out there in that dumpster. I don't know how hoarder people do it because the hoarder people, you know, y'all have seen the show Hoarders. They'll fight with you. Everything's valuable. Everything's this. Me, I'm like, who the fuck wants it? I gotta get it gone, you know? But it's been an absolutely crazy, just 7 days of bananas behavior trying to get that put in. And that's what speaks great to these online businesses. I haven't done any work in a week, to make the business grow. All I've done is, of course, pack, ship orders, do a little bit of email. And when people have questions, I was able to make my full weekly wage. And I spent every hour of the day, if I was active at all, filling up that dumpster. So that is pretty great. Yeah, I couldn't be happier seeing a dumpster full of stuff out there. I got my brand new looking house back. Everything is great. Got rid of all the stuff that didn't sell. Or you just wouldn't believe how much, like cardboard, right? Like retail packaging, how much that builds up. And, you'll put a little to the side, and especially after stuff's already cluttered. And yeah, I just let it go way too far. But now we are golden. Business has grown towards the only thing I'm doing. House looks half spectacular. It's about to be full spectacular. Dumpster will be gone tomorrow. Fuck some hoarders, man. That shit would be a bananas life game to live, It is a beautiful day on my side here. You know what I mean?
Wow, wow.